Oh, come from, yes, yes, certainly. Yeah, if that's the case, then no problem.
So, recently, there are a lot of wars going on. Like, so, what what Buddhism has to say about like resolving conflicts? Like, how can you answer violence? Against with if violence threatens you with death, also.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things is to separate out what is projection and fear, and what are you actually facing? Because like right now, if you read the media, then and there's certainly areas that are undergoing tremendous conflict. Ukraine, Gaza, Israel. I mean, those are places that are experiencing real conflict. But then, how do we say as human beings, as Buddhists, respond to conflict in our life? I mean, that's a different thing. How do you respond to aggression or aversion? And a lot of it is just being able to put one's attention on certainly on loving kindness and compassion, um, establishing a foundation of trust and communication with people around one, also having the wisdom and mindfulness to pay attention to potential situations that could result in conflict if one were not careful. So there's all sorts of things that one can be doing. But in terms of how do we respond to conflict in the world, I think you need to pay attention to what is or the difference between conflict you're actually experiencing and conflict that your fear is being generated and stirred up through constantly looking at your phone and going back to media reports that are quite disturbing. And quite rightly they are disturbing, but that's also what sells news, and so that by kind of buying into it, we also kind of contribute to the reporting of it. So it's not a how do you say, there's nuances to to your question that you have to really separate out. But the aspect of how do we deal with conflict in our life, and one of the main ways is through skillful communication. How do we, because we can be in contact with a situation or people that we don't particularly like, but then or they are they are kind of aggressive, and then if you're not skillful with your communication, then it stimulates that kind of aggression and exacerbates conflict. Whereas if one is you got your feelers out and you are skillful in how you communicate, then you can create bonds of trust between people who are quite different or quite different backgrounds. Yes.
How to overcome the negative thoughts? How to overcome the negative thoughts?
Okay. I mean, one is the first thing of overcoming negative thoughts is recognizing that they are suffering. This is because sometimes when we justify negative thoughts, or where we're kind of addicted to negative thoughts because it's it kind of fulfills something or other, but really being able to see the unsatisfactory nature of that kind of negativity, and realize that we ourselves are contributing to our own suffering by say encouraging or getting stuck in negative thought patterns. So it's an understanding of the immediate effect of, say, the karmic result of negativity is suffering, and so being able to understand that and not be again, is because sometimes we're very quick to justify our own biases, our own dislikes, our own prejudices, but they're still negative. As much as we kind of think, oh, this is right or righteous, it still is painful. So that when you look at things clearly, you realize, no, I don't need to accumulate more suffering just for the sake of following thought patterns that are not fruitful or beneficial. And of course, with counters of negative thoughts, it's certainly that loving kindness and compassion is really important. But I think it's important to understand the uncomfortable, unpleasant nature of negativity, in order to relinquish, and then one can counter with putting one's attention more to thoughts of loving kindness, thoughts of compassion. Those are thoughts of sympathetic joy. These are the divine abidings, the Brahma Viharas, Metta, Karuna, Mudita, Upekha, and those are counters to negativity. But and I remember one of the senior monks in our community calling them the mature emotions. I think is a really good description. This is how a mature mind or a mature heart responds to the world around. It comes back to these loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, empathy, equanimity. Those are and equanimity is not indifference. It means it's just not getting caught up in the reactions that tend to arise.
Lumbo, I have a question. In the Mangal Sutta, in the teachings of Buddha, the first thing is Asevana cha Balanan.
Yes.
Now, this is something which I wanted to talk about, because I have a problem wherein, suppose if you have somebody very close to you, and the definition of being a sevana, I mean the murak, I mean in Hindi we call it Murak, and in English we'll call it lack of wisdom or not following things the way they should be understood.
Yes.
If you have,
usually it's translated as a fool.
yeah, in English it is. I'm not using that word. I'm not using that word deliberately, but I was thinking that fool would not be only a person who is not understanding.
Yeah.
They understand the things very well, but yet there is repulsion or aggression towards a thought which you think could help both of us and would we can lead our life very peacefully. So the teachings, so the point is somebody who is too much engulfed with whatever has been learned and is not ready to unlearn that and get into the new robe or new teaching or understand what is reality, it becomes a very big problem, So then equanimity is lost, and then there is repulsion. There are all sort of those things, negativity around you. So you feel very pathetic sometimes, on this issue, because you cannot, because here it is said you should not sit with fools, but here it is impossible not to sit because they're part of you.
Well, I mean, the thing is it's even when the kind of the fools or the people who are unskillful are, part of our circle of friends or family. It's how we interact that is important. Because knowing how to establish boundaries is a part of wisdom. Because sometimes somebody is generally not a skillful person, and they pull you into unskillfulness or confusion or conflict, then you have to know how to pull back, because it's just acquiescing to other people because they are in your circle of friends or in your circle of acquaintances at the workplace or in your circle of family even. You still have to I mean, this is where wisdom is so important, to know, have some discernment, because if you're not discerning clearly and making really skillful choices, then we get pulled into all sorts of things that are not fruitful, not beneficial, not useful in our life, and then we reap the fruits of that. So that you really have to pay attention to those associations that we have. It doesn't mean that we dwell in aversion to somebody or fearful of somebody because they're just okay. That's a person who is to be avoided, or their opinion is not to be trusted, and to not draw close to them in terms of friendship and companionship. You have to be in contact with all sorts of different people in human relationships, but you also have to know how to decide where you put your time and your energy with people. Otherwise, it gets, really, life is already complicated without making it more complicated. And association, contact with the people, and then of course the second one is sevanacha panditanacha sevana, to associate with the wise, somebody who's abundant, who's a wise person, an exemplary person. You want to draw close to those kind of people. So it's a pair that one relies on, and to not feel that you've got to, well, as a Buddhist, you should accept everybody. Um, you don't want to dwell in aversion to anybody, but you also you don't want to just blindly accept other people's views, opinions, preferences, just because not every opinion is valid. Not every way of conducting one's life is valid. There are the unskillful and the unwholesome. There is the wholesome and the skillful. You really want to recognize how that works and functions in real life, and draw close to people who are living a skillful life.
Kindly give more light on power of manifestation.
Power of manifestation. What's that mean?
Vrindami Baddeji, this is Keshav Kamre. Yesterday, while giving your discourses, you just compassion, living kindness, power of manifestations, something this you have this use this thing. So I would just wanted to how it is in the Buddha's power of manifestations can be correlated with our meditation actually.
I didn't quite. I mean, I wasn't able to. I was only able to pick up about a third of what the person was saying, and it's
power of manifestation. Power of manifestations during the meditation actually. That is a. Yesterday you have given one that word actually. I have just noted down and in Buddha's this thing actually loving kindness, compassions, power of manifestations that helps for the keeping the one's goal achieved. Something we are talking about this. Just little more is required in that line.
That seems like that was better.
Yeah, I'm not.
Can you have them say it in Hindi and then you translate it? Okay. The accent is very strong.
Actually, what I gathered was he was saying yesterday's session.
Yeah.
That mentioned about loving kindness.
Yeah.
And in the context talked about manifestations. And that he wanted you to elaborate on. That's what I gathered.
Yeah, that's what I gathered, but I'm not really picking up what one. I don't know what it means or what it's actually referring to.
People are trying to manifest things. It might be something.
I don't know. I'm a bit I'm confused.
I am asking to give more details.
Share this portion of the discourse.
Sure.
Then you can listen.
Sure.
Longpar, my question is like, having gone through some traumatic situations in the past, and also going through chronic illness, like a lot of fear stems inside you thinking, what if this happens in the future again?
Mm-hmm.
And when that similar kind of situation, you think it might happen, and the mind starts going into the papancha loop of proliferation. At one time, you're using your mindfulness, okay, how to deal with it in the most wise manner. But when there's a lot of that going on, there's a lot of fear and worries also stem up when you are thinking about those events.
Yeah.
Like they can happen. One time you're trying to prepare yourself, they happen. but at the same time, the mind is completely gets absorbed in those energies of fear and worries. So my question is, how do you strike a balance between these, and how to overcome those things? Because especially those things have happened in the past, so there's always that fear and worries lingering.
Yeah, I think with fear, and especially if one has a history of some kind of trauma that has happened, that those loops get played over again. And excuse me. And to a certain degree, it's helpful because you want to be prepared. But then there's a point where it does kind of tip over into just excessive anticipation, anxiety over what could happen, or what's, and of course anything can happen. So it's we're on alert all the time, and it's really it's too much. So I think one of the things with for myself, that was my own kind of go-to option in say emotion, was fear, anxiety. And one of the ways that I felt was really helpful for working with that is, rather than going to because the mind is going to go to it anyway, prepare or proliferate, and in order to help to say soften or ameliorate that tendency, rather than taking the mental object of possibility and preparation, like just going to the body and paying attention to how fear manifests in the body, and to draw attention to how to relax around fear. The moment that fear starts to gain, it's looking for traction. Where does it tie a knot in one's stomach or one's chest or one's just learning how to come back to the body and really paying attention to the physical sensation of contraction, because usually fear is a contracting emotion. To be able to approach that contraction with a sense of mindfulness, but also relaxing and a certain benevolence of softening that the physical, say, reaction or associated response to fear. So that, to me, that over time, that tended to undermine the proliferation, and have a place to develop mindfulness, place to develop attention that was giving quite a sense of relief and ease from the habit of fear and anxiety. So that's my perspective or suggestion, to give it a try.
Thank you. And is it also okay? I mean, I do try to watch my sensations at that point, but sometimes for me, it also becomes like when I'm projecting those scenarios in my mind, to be prepared for them, I also try to run my thoughts with my loved ones or friends who I know I can rely on. And that also sometimes helps to soften the proliferation that's going on. Is that also advisable?
Anything that works is advisable. I think that's, you have to experiment and see, well, what what helps, what works, what helps to cut that edge of the kind of fear and anxiety.
Thank you.
No more.
Yes. So I have, few things which I would like to ask. One is around object of meditation, which is like I come from a Sen Goenka's tradition where I had understood Vipassana and Anapanasati, and I had been in this kind of a formal monastic tradition from this year itself, when I went to Mahabodhi Society in June, and I came in touch, and I also attended one rain retreat at Wat Map Jan, the recent one, and that is where I came to know about this place also. And while I am being drawn into this, but at the same time, uh, there had like Ajan, I heard like breath as an object and body also as an object. When I started contemplating or putting my awareness on the body, I felt better. I felt it easier to meditate on as compared to breath. And so, but then I'm also a confused person. I get confused at times and many times. And then, which object at what time to focus on? Now there is body, there is breath also, and then there is sensations. And if you hear Satipatthana Sutta, there are also more, which...
Well, there's more. I mean, Acharya Buddhaghosa compiled all of the different, or a good number of the different meditation techniques and came up with 40 different meditation techniques. So, there's a lot. But I think one of the things is important is to be willing to experiment and see what feels, doable, what works. It's not, because this is not say like a dogmatic teaching that says you've got to do that like this, and the Buddha is saying you got to figure it out. Here's different, and the Buddha himself gave all sorts of different techniques to different people at different times, depending on their temperament, and so we have to be able to pay attention to our own temperament and preference, and get a sense of what might work, and then give it a try, and pursue it for a suitable amount of time, so that one gets a feel for it. But it's it really is about learning how these different techniques help support the. A lot of it's around the establishing of right effort, because right effort is not about how much effort or whatnot. It's about the result. Does it result in an increase of wholesome qualities and the decrease of unwholesome qualities, or does the effort do the opposite? It increases unwholesome qualities and decreases the wholesome qualities. So it's more about the quality of being, quality of mind that is there and is resulting, so that you're not paying attention so much to which is the right technique. It's what works for me. What is it that produces wholesome results? Also, I think to the one of Ajahn Chah's teachers uh, when he, somebody was experiencing some sort of difficulty or problem, or having some doubts in the practice, and he said, it's just practice is not that difficult. If the kilesas come at you low, then you jump over them. If they come at you high, then you duck. Just make it practical. Don't overthink it. Don't speculate. Don't turn it into a whole philosophical debate about right and wrong, or all of that. It's sort of, how do I work with my mind so that I'm experiencing more well-being and less suffering.
So how to, I mean, in the same subsequent question is, how do you see for yourself the progress which you are making? And is it a good thing to have, I mean, how can you even have a smaller goal in this practice? Because there is a goal, which is...
There's a goal, yes, absolutely.
So, but that's a very, very long term.
Yeah, that's why that sense of it's measured in terms of the increase of the wholesome and the skillful, and the decrease of the unwholesome, the unskillful. Because attendant to that, intrinsic to the so like wholesome qualities, wholesome mental states, is happiness and well-being. Intrinsic to the presence of the unskillful, the unwholesome in them is suffering in some way, shape, or form. It's intrinsic to that. That's the nature of that mental state. So that being able to pay attention to the quality of one's heart, and what are the moods, what are the feelings, what are the thoughts that we're experiencing, how do they line up?
Sure, thank you. Yeah.
So one more, like this regarding the precepts. Like, so precepts are there for us, how like having a base, making a good base for us for our meditation. So like for alcohol is like, it is regarded as that everybody knows that it is harmful, but like the non-vegetarian food, so like eating an egg, like egg, or eating non-vegetarian food for medicinal purposes, is it, does it harm the meditation practice, or
Well, it depends on one's perspective. I mean, especially coming from a culture that is very, very clearly vegetarian, then there's going to be all sorts of say doubts or anxieties of if one comes from a culture like the northeast of Thailand, where Ajahn Chah grew up. I mean, it's as long as you're not killing it yourself, and it's okay. I mean, it's sort of it's a very different perspective. But you have to understand your own perspective. I mean, it's like coming from a really subsistence culture that is, really challenged in terms of their resources, people, or so it's to a certain degree, for oneself, if you have a very strong cultural conditioning, then taking, even if it's for a medicinal purpose or not, it's not going to feel good, and it's just quite natural. In different cultural conditionings produce different results, and so that I think you have to sort of honor your own background and recognize what does one feel, what is one comfortable with. But certainly in terms of the Buddhas, and that's specific to Theravada Buddhism, is that as long as it's not seen, heard, or suspected that some life was taken for one's benefit, then the Buddha made an allowance for that. But then even in, say, like Mahayana cultures, there's very strong value placed on not just vegetarian, vegan as well. So that, say, like we live very close to a Chinese Mahayana monastery, which we have a very good relationship with, and they're very so even milk or cheese is really not appropriate for them. And so for, say, like in Indian culture and particularly Hindu culture, then I mean, milk and butter is just ordinary. So yeah, but you also have to recognize the power of cultural conditioning, and not, it's not that we want to be slaves to it, but you also recognize it affects how we perceive and feel about things. So you if you don't need to, then yeah, do something. You pay attention to looking after the things that are going to make you feel okay. You push that past the mic down.
I have a tendency to take long time to make decisions.
Okay.
And that's, I think part of it is because I want a better options. Like I want more and a bit more.
Yeah.
And also I don't want to fail, or I don't want to lose opportunities. So how can I tame this, like, I want a little bit more, like desire for this, while not losing my aspiration for doing better?
Well, I'm looking because part of it is seeing understanding more, quite clearly the actual limitation that a little bit more brings as well. Because sometimes we put off what could be done, looking for a perfect solution for the future. And we miss opportunities for doing something that is, or benefiting from something. So it's just is trying to reflect on that limitation and that habit. And part of those habits is just sort of recognizing the impulses of the mind for controlling or being and becoming, how that manifests, and see, can I relinquish that? Can I let go? Is there a problem with that? Because oftentimes we're looking for the best, the most right, the most correct, and in the end, there isn't really such a thing. I mean, it's a projection that we hope will manifest, but it's sort of It's recognizing the limitation that we place on ourselves and give ourselves. That said, there are sometimes when you just have to recognize that I don't need to jump to a conclusion. I don't need to make a choice right now. I can wait and see. So there's not a clear answer to this other than paying attention to the habits of mind and how much we invest in trying to prop up our sense of self in being right and being correct and getting things right. And because there's that fear of failure in there, and to be able to be comfortable with making a choice and then experimenting and sort of just going against the grain and going ahead and making sure, even if because learning from failure, learning from mistakes is not a bad thing either. There's somebody over here.
When an intense emotion suddenly erupts of anger, then I watch physical sensation in the body, and emotions gets softened. And after doing a certain deep breathing, emotions is abolished. But after few days, it again erupts. I do the same thing, deep breathing and watching of the physical sensations. Again, emotions get reduced. Now, to remove it permanently, or I should say, to cure it permanently, I need to do investigations and reflectance. So kindly, will you elaborate about something more about investigations and reflectance? What is that? Thank you.
I think one of the things that's really important, especially in terms of anger or ill will aversion, is the investigation of our what view am I holding? What preference am I holding that is being challenged? Because usually what happens is we get angry or we get upset when something doesn't agree with our particular preference or our particular view of what's right or how it should be. And so to be able to investigate more clearly what is being challenged that triggers that emotion of anger, and is that even valid? Because so often anger is not a rational response. So being able to pay attention more to the roots of the anger, as opposed to because the emotion has no end to it, really. And yes, you need to work with the feeling, you need to deal with that, you need to ameliorate it or dissipate it, but you have to be paying attention to what are the particular views that I'm holding, what stand am I making that is creating this opposition that ends up in anger. So when that's understood more clearly, then that knot or that tangle let's say, response of anger it can be let go of.
The view is this. I think that my view is correct.
Yes.
And others' view.
Yes, I'm right and everybody else is wrong.
Yeah. So, yeah. So.
Which on a rational basis, you can't really hold it.
Yeah. Our word is wrong. So how to remove this part, I mean?
Well, you can't take yourself so seriously. You realize, yeah, I don't have the complete picture. I'm not omniscient in terms of knowledge. I'm working on a flawed perception of the world and things. So then you can start releasing the kind of grip that one has. But a lot of it comes from this. Yeah, you have to learn how to not take yourself too seriously.
How to do it? That's my thing.
Well, the thing is if you don't do it, you just keep suffering. And so it's bring it back to basics. Do I want to suffer more or do I want to suffer less? And so I think that, the rational answer is I want to suffer less. That even so that one's views start to become too heavy to carry around, because it ends up in suffering.
Ajahn, I wanted to know how to change the view for the betterment.
Well, if you see the pain and the uncomfortable nature of it, then you let go. It's sort of, it's like if I carry this around, I don't want this to be heavy. Shouldn't be heavy like that. I shouldn't have to deal with this. Why is it this way? And it is I can find all sorts of ways to try to make it less heavy, but in the end, sort of, I've got to learn I just got to put it down. I can't carry it around.
Ajahn, I understand all these things, but the question comes again, how to let it go?
Well, it's just, you don't need to know how before you'll commit to do. Just recognize, am I willing to let go? Because this is not sort of, I need to learn how. Just pay attention. I don't want to suffer. I want to be happy. I want to be peaceful. I don't want to carry this burden around anymore. And in the same way, if I'm holding that clock, I can spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out the mechanics of how to let go and figure out the physiological reality of how I hold on. But in the end, it's just too much trouble. I'll put it down. We know how to do it already. And we just have to be willing to see the limitation.
Question from the online group?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah. So there's a question from Mr. Keshav Kamble, who's asking how to practice non-self when self is responsible for his wholesome and unwholesome deeds.
Well, the Buddha said very clearly, "Atta hi atta no nato." Self is the refuge of self. But you have to understand that the teaching that the Buddha gives on not self is not a metaphysical teaching on the nature of self or no self. it is a strategy for recognizing whatever we grasp onto or hold onto is not self. There's a difference between not self and no self. And it's important to it's not that there's actually nowhere in the canon where the Buddha actually says there is no self. But what he says is whatever you assume selfhood in, that is not self. And also just the anatta, not self teaching, is a middle way. In the sense of, even in the structure of the language, sort of the anatta is your middle possibility, where one extreme is atta, this is me, this is mine, this is myself, and the other extreme is niratta, this is there is no self. It's a negation, and a negation of self. There is no self. There's no being, no. But the Buddha, there is a say we assume selfhood in things like the body, feeling, perceptions, mental formations, consciousness. We assume self, but it doesn't have a substantial existence. It arises, it ceases. So it's not self. So being able to see things in their not self nature is seeing their ephemeral, uncertain, changing quality. But to take a position of there is no self or there's no being is an extreme. In the same way that saying, this is me, this is mine, this is what I am, is another extreme. So that it's the middle way of being able to go through this experience of human life and not try to build a metaphysical position on either existence or non-existence.
There's another question from Dan Jones from Australia. He actually has two questions. Dear Longpo, one can be aware of many different monasteries and teachings. To one serious about giving one's life to Dhamma, being in Sansara, how should we go about finding a community?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is finding a community of like-minded people. So that sense of a feeling of affinity, and also that it's based on a good moral foundation. Good sila is solid. Commitment to training, so that's and commitment to teachings that are practical and grounded in the tradition. But it's important to not think that there is some perfect monastery somewhere, some perfect teacher who's completely pure and they're all completely harmonious and it's just that doesn't exist. You have is it good enough? Is a question to ask oneself, rather than is everybody in the monastery pure? Is everybody in the monastery wise? Are they all accomplished and are they all enlightened? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've been a monk for 50 years. I don't know where monasteries like that exist. So they're just human beings are human beings. But if they're really committed to trying and committed to integrity and committed to a willingness to live together harmoniously, that's a huge foundation to pay attention to. I think we're at the end. Okay. Okay. Enough. Perfect. Come together again at 6 for evening puja, meditation, namaskar.